Music. It's something we take for granted, and yet we practically hear it everywhere. It's not just chart music either. There's radio jingles, intros, background music, short jingles, TV and movie soundtracks, and so much more. Even computers and mobile phones have a short music cue when they open up and turn on. The point is, music not only occupies much of our livelihoods, but depending on what we listen to and how we respond to it, music can change the way we think and behave in day-to-day life. As for me folks, well, I'm somebody who loves 1970s, 1980s and mostly 1990s music. So for example, I love stuff from these couple of artists I have here for you. I love Jamiroquai, I love Bjork. Bjork is one of my favourite artists at the moment. I especially love Kate Bush, huge fan of Kate Bush, and Dusty Springfield. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, to be fair, most of the soundtracks I have here are compilation albums. You know, albums where they get all kinds of songs and artists from different genres and different decades and stuff them all into one package on usually multiple discs. But for me, I've got a few artists like those and I love them. Here's the thing though. Video game soundtracks are legit and I love them. And a good video game soundtrack, I believe, can be better than what you get here from the mainstream market. I mean, look at this for example. I've got a vinyl of Persona 4 Arena, and as you can see, it's it's pretty interesting, isn't it? Look at that for vinyl, jeez. But that's just one example. But in today's video, I'm going to show you some of my favourite soundtracks that I've listened to recently. So get on your favourite pair of headphones, in my case the AKG K702, and let's listen. Ace Combat Shattered Skies was the second of 3 Ace Combat games for the PlayStation 2. Actually, this game makes history for the channel because this is the first PlayStation 2 game I've ever talked about.
They've even got bombers. They want to destroy the base itself.
For those of you who saw my last video, I spoke about Ace Combat 3, which was an arcade-style flight simulator game. I praised that game for having a great soundtrack, and Ace Combat Shattered Skies takes it to the next level. The game goes for an orchestral soundtrack, and this always excites me because a really good one can make a big difference. Ace Combat 5 really nails the music. It sounds superb. From the very beginning, the ambient background music was already catching my attention. And then, once the true game begins, the soundtrack knows how to build up the suspense and action. Once everything kicks off, the music responds and damn, it's a beautiful experience. Suddenly, I was feeling the world at war, but the soundtrack was giving me, the good guy, the hope and power to get through every mission with confidence and a sense of grace.
We have 3 carriers. Don't let them sink even one. Archer, engaging. Edge, engaging.
Kiba Kobayashi and other composers worked on the soundtrack, although he was the main man behind most of the songs. I can tell he was partly inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean in some of the music tracks. Well, I think he was.
We are under air attack! Repeat, we are under air attack! I trust you can hold the run.
My favourite song is the one that plays in the mission, Rendezvous. It starts slowly and builds up, and once you are in distance of your enemies, it explodes into life, and so does the mission.
Hey, come on! We need some air support here!
I couldn't stop smiling playing this game. I knew that I was in the capable hands of Namco, who always did their best in making the player feel part of their worlds, and this one with its beautifully composed soundtrack makes me really appreciate what went into making the game as good as it is.
The captain of the aircraft carrier Kestrel, my congratulations to all ships that managed to escape. As captain, I will now form a provisional battle fleet. The enemy has built a blockade with their fleet in front of us. We have to break through this and escape to safer waters. Good luck, everyone. All friendly aircraft, your support is requested. Blaze, this is Thunderhead. Are you clear on the mission objective?
Let's jump forward to 2019 when this long-awaited game was finally released. Yes, another first for the channel, a game from more recent times which is unusual for me to cover. Anyway, after Ace Combat The Balkan War, I never got to play a new game in the series until now. As soon as I saw it on Steam, I bought it right away, brand new in 2 seconds.
Prepare to engage in 30 seconds.
We'll go. Here they come. Take them down.
I knew absolutely nothing about the game at all until I saw it that day and took a chance on it. My god, I was rewarded.
As we get wet wild and do dirty, dirty things. Once you hit one of them, stick to them like glue. Don't let them out of your...
This is one of the best games of 2019 and my second favourite game of that year, behind Resident Evil 2 Remake. Anyway, let's forget about that for now. The soundtrack is why you're here and... oh my god! This isn't a soundtrack, it's a musical masterpiece.
Target destroyed.
I find this hard to believe, but the music on offer is even better. It's still an orchestral soundtrack, but it has more military themes behind it this time, and incorporates more rock elements too, with a dash of electronic sounds to keep it up to date.
That convincing. Shit! The enemy just hit the control tower!
Everything I've said about the Ace Combat 5 soundtrack applies here, but the dial has been upped to 11. The music is dramatic from the start. It's powerful, full of energy, with masterful build-up, great sounding instruments, and a composer who really brought their knowledge and know-how to the table. And yes, it's the same one from Ace Combat 5, so there you go.
Air 15 got him.
Soul 1, please respond. What's your status? My status? So excited.
I thought music in AAA games was considered an afterthought, but this game brings it back to the forefront with a vengeance.
I don't get it. Why isn't it opening fire? I'm scared.
I love this soundtrack, not just on a cellular level, not just on a technical level, but on a personal level too.
Spare 15 standing.
If you need a great video game soundtrack on the go or for a casual listen, then look no further.
Behind target, attacking. They got me!
3 remaining.
Let's lock. They decided. Missile! Evading! He escaped into the clouds! Eject! We need reinforcements now!
Let's rewind the clock and go back to 1998. Resident Evil 2 is the best game in the series, and every time I play this game I'm reminded why that is. Yes, the gameplay is dated. Yes, the horror comes across as cheesy nowadays. Yes, the voice acting is nothing great. And yes, it's a short game, even with the different scenarios. But many people still talk about this game like no tomorrow, and believe me, once you play it, it's not hard to see why. It gets horror like no other game. The environments are still creepy, the characters are endearing and likeable, I love the pacing of the game, and although the puzzles are easy, I felt most were better integrated into the game, aside from a few questionable choices. Anyway, let's discuss the soundtrack. After 20 years, I can safely tell you, the viewer, that this is the best horror soundtrack ever made. It's extremely creepy sounding without being cheesy, and every song works to engross you into the chaos that is surrounding Raccoon City. I love the quieter songs especially. Their eerie low-tone sound keeps you guessing with what could occur next, and it's very unsettling. I never once felt bored or annoyed at the soundtrack, and its pacing is very good, never overstaying its welcome. In fact, there's a few areas where no music plays at all, making you somewhat confused with the environment around you, as there's nothing to give you a sense of what's to come. When the music does return, its powerful impact is felt, and because it usually follows something unsettling afterwards, the music becomes more memorable. An example would be the first time the player enters the RPD. The swooping camera of the interior, looking in great condition compared to the outside world, gives the player a sense of safety and comfort, but the music cue still sounds creepy, and of course, in reality, nowhere is safe. Aside from the famous save game music, that sound alone makes you feel good after all of the hell you've had to endure. Ultimately, Resident Evil 2 just seems to age like fine wine, and the soundtrack is just the pinnacle of that statement. I love this game, and the soundtrack is so good, Capcom will let you have it play in the remake, for a small fee, of course.
Sorry about that. When I saw the uniform, I thought you were another zombie.
Who are you?
Ada Wong.
And what are you doing here?
I'm looking for some guy named Ben. He's one of those reporter types, always looking for a scoop.
The dancing crave was strong in the late 1990s, and Buster Groove took advantage of that. With a soundtrack done by Avex Trax, Buster Groove thrusted itself into the front lines of battle against Dance Dance and Parappa the Rapper. Dancing and rhythm games live and breathe on their soundtracks, but also die on them if they are just god awful. Thankfully for Avex Trax, the music on offer here is amazing. Every character has a different kind of dancing style, and the music accompanies that by playing fitting music. This gives every stage a unique feel, and of course affects how fast or slow the game will be. The music is infectious, catchy as well, with mostly simple yet pleasing lyrics, great use of drums, and a sense of personality about each song. You do lose yourself just listening to the songs, especially when the dancing frenzy starts getting overly flashy. I really love Heat's theme song though. It was the first song I ever heard when I played this game in a 2003 demo disc, and holy shit, it has everything! Amazing rapping verses, great background singers, a catchy riff, and it's high octane, like a kid trying to be cool, only done in a more tasteful manner. No wonder this game is still talked about many years later. The soundtrack was really something to be excited about, and it still stands out many years later. Yes, there are many dancing games with great soundtracks, but Buster Grooves will always be the one that stays in my mind forever. here is Guilty Gear for the PlayStation. Yes, in my last video I spoke about this game, but now let's talk about the soundtrack. Guilty Gear is a 2D fighting game, and as you can see, it has anime roots. I mean, it would, that makes it cool already. Anyway, nonsense aside, this is a great if difficult fighting game, and one which will require patience and skill from you. Good thing then that the heavy metal soundtrack is legendarily good. Honestly, all of it is quite frankly the best of its kind here. Every song has an urgency about it which makes every fight epic and exciting. Even the softer songs and ones that don't explode immediately with heavy metal thrashing and guitar solos make you feel as if a huge fight is about to transpire. It's very effective, and you can tell the composers love their work. Each song leaves you feeling satisfied, especially when everything kicks off and explodes into a surge of noise and power. My favourite themes from the game? Well, they have to be Really Outrageous theme, Kai Kisuke's, and Justice's theme. Just listen to it. I cannot tell you how much fun I had beating her to this wonderful piece of musical mastery. If you tell me you don't like this soundtrack, then, I don't know, you are missing out, that much is for sure. I just wished there was more of it. 15 tracks of goodness sounds great, but in reality, unless you listen online, on the disc, or purchase the original soundtrack, you only hear maybe a minute and a half at best when you actually play the game. Still, you'll be in a great mindset knowing that every screen and opponent has a soundtrack to die for, and that makes Guilty Gear's debut all the more special. Well folks, we're halfway through the video. Hopefully you're loving the soundtracks on offer here. Like I said before, obviously these soundtracks are soundtracks that I've loved recently. So I've listened to them recently, or bought the games recently in question, and I've got to listen to them and I thought, wow, the soundtrack is so good, I've got to listen to it on my car, or on my phone, or on the computer, just anywhere but the game. But the reason why I'm showing these soundtracks is because not only are they good in the game, as they should be, but they're so good you want to take them home with you. But we've still got some soundtracks left to show you, and well, let's get our headphones back on for the second half of this video. Right, here is Silent Hill 3. I love the first 3 games in this series. Konami's take on survival horror definitely has a more psychological horror approach instead of the jump scares and sudden terror found in most horror games and movies. This means the game world and music has to accompany such a design choice. I'm aware that most people, myself included, think that the second game in the series is the best one, and it is. Silent Hill 3 is still great, and the dark, creepy music reflect that. I love how the music makes me feel nervous and uneasy with even the most basic of enemies. To 1 minute go from a normal life to sheer terror in moments is a blast. I recommend you use headphones because that is where the game shines. Although there isn't usually out and out music playing, the use of ambient and soft background music plays with your mind. It's very unusual and quite disturbing to listen to. At times it comes across as unpleasant noise, but that's the point. You are thrusted into a very gruesome unknown world and the music reflects this perfectly. I was just scared listening to the sounds, never mind playing the game. I haven't got too far yet, but I'm loving what I've experienced so far and I cannot wait for more. This is definitely a well executed soundtrack for sure, and I cannot wait to see what else is in store for me.
Transcending history and the world, a tale of soul and swords, eternally retold.
Now, here is Soul Blade. Originally an arcade game called Soul Edge, Soul Blade took the world by storm. It was a bestseller here in the UK and achieved platinum sales as well. Anyhow, the soundtrack is just stunning, simply one of the best, and I shall explain why. Anyhow, the soundtrack is just stunning, simply one of the best, and I shall explain why. The intro cutscene has one of the most satisfying opening songs ever. It rocks and it's just damn catchy. It's a very iconic song, that's for sure. Then, there's actually 3 different types of soundtrack on offer. First is the original soundtrack. Going for a Japanese classical type sound, the music fits the medieval tone the series was going for, and it's very well made. I love Hwang's theme most here, but truth be told, I really like every song. All done with a smattering of personality too, just how it should be. Next is the arranged version. It's the same as the original, only done in CD format so that it sounds better.
The grueling battle ended with the victory.
To be honest, it's not as good. I mean, it's good, obviously, and you will enjoy it, but the soundtrack to me loses some of the charm of the arcade original, and not all of the improvements here really do much for me. It comes across as an afterthought instead of something worthwhile. I do like Rock's theme in this mode, and there are some interesting changes to the instruments used, but otherwise it's nothing special to me.
Battle 3, fight!
However, the Khan Super Session exclusive to the PS1 version is amazing, truly stunning. Every song is redone, remade, and all of it sounds class.
Out of the ring.
The soul and passion for the soundtrack is oozed out in droves. Every song is catchy, emotional, action-packed, and much longer too, roughly 3 minutes in length or so. It stops the music from looping too much during longer fights, which is handy. I never even knew this existed until roughly 2018 or so. I was just going through the BGM options when I saw it. I thought, wait, what's that? Well, better late than never, right? Soul Blade's soundtrack is incredible from top to bottom. I've always preferred the Soul series soundtrack as opposed to the Tekken series, even though that series has a good soundtrack too. So, how does the up-to-date version fare? Well, there's only one choice of soundtrack, and with that, it has to be good, right? Well, the menu themes certainly seem good, and I like the calm atmosphere they provide as you look around the menu. It makes being around a pleasant experience. As for the in-game soundtrack, it's very, very good.
Ready? Hiya! No way!
It's an orchestral soundtrack that does a satisfying job hyping up the action and then calming it down once a match has concluded. I love the heavenly sounds, and since the game still has a medieval vibe to it, the soundtrack does a good job making you feel at home, getting ready to fight for your cause, and then bring down shame on those who dare to challenge you. The only thing I did not like is how often the music is drowned out by extremely loud sound effects. It makes enjoying the battle music a bit challenging at times. Of course you could play with the volume sliders, but I couldn't be bothered when I feel the soundbound should be good from the start. Anyway, Soul Calibur 6 is a true return to a great game series that was stuck in a rut for far too long.
Victory will not.
The soundtrack does a good job with hooking you in and keeping you around for the Philharmonic experience. Music this good does not deserve to be missed out on, after all.
Now, the noble wolves carve their souls into their swords.
I'm sorry, but I can't back down. Very well. A battle it shall be.
Battle 1. Fight!
Ready? No way! Oh!
I know, and yes, I did indeed talk about this game in my last video, but seriously, the more I thought about it, the better the soundtrack became to me. For the PS1, I cannot think of a better soundtrack, and considering this is an action RPG game, that's saying a lot for me. The game literally explodes into life from the get-go. The intro soundtrack is one of the best I've ever heard. It's brief and simple, but it's an indicator of what's to come next. The game then starts, and for the next 10 to 15 minutes, the soundtrack never stops playing. It flows seamlessly without a sweat, changing the mood and tone with every new scene. It's like a movie soundtrack and done with expert poise and precision. The orchestral soundtrack here is top class, and every song plays with your emotions on a personal level. There seems to be no limit with how much greatness the soundtrack goes for, from the 10-minute opening to the epic boss battle music and to the more dramatic moments in the game. All of it is wonderfully and tastefully done. Hitoshi Sakamoto did the soundtrack, and it was a departure for him. He was well known for doing mainly cheerful tunes, but here the dark and depressing soundtrack was a turning point, and he absolutely enjoyed every second of it. He once said Vagrants was his favourite soundtrack to work on, and it certainly shows here. He put his all into making this soundtrack, and the payoff is felt in every song. This is one of the best soundtracks on the PlayStation, and the fact that I took a chance on it makes me feel special inside. I was rewarded with a great game, a wonderful soundtrack to boot, and an experience I soon won't forget. Now we've seen and listened to many great soundtracks in this video, but for me there's only one game that has the soundtrack to outdo all contenders for best soundtrack. Outlaws. Outlaws is a forgotten PC first-person shooter game made and released by LucasArts in 1997. I had it as a child and loved it. However, more than 20 years later, I finally got to play it again, and oh my word, this soundtrack is quite possibly the finest soundtrack I've ever heard. Hearing it, you can just tell it wasn't conjured up from a corporation think tank. It's clearly been crafted and made by a real musical enthusiast. The game is set in the Wild West, and clearly the Clint Eastwood films were a big inspiration for the composer, but they just sound so right, giving the soundtrack a quality that only the best movies can boast about. And the last time I heard a soundtrack this good, I think I was watching a 1980s movie. Then there's the actual instruments they use, they just sound so good. It's truly a gift from the gods of music. Seriously, I cannot think of a soundtrack that's left me so satisfied, so happy and inspired every time I listen to it.
Had enough yet?
This is my benchmark for great soundtracks because what we have here is simply the best. All of the music is long, involved, expertly paced and keeps you on your toes from start to finish. Some of it would actually sound at home in a horror film, I swear. The music has such a powerful impact on what's going on around you, and it keeps you guessing but can inspire confidence when you truly need it. Did I mention all of the songs are full of emotion, soul and passion? Because they are. I never get tired of the soundtrack. I just never want it to stop. I always wished there was an Outlaws 2, just so that we could have another opportunity to hear more of Clint Bajarkian's work. If Clint is watching this, you sir deserve an Oscar for this. This is exactly what I mean when I say most video games don't have a good soundtrack anymore. Put any video game soundtrack next to this one, and I'm sorry, their soundtracks in comparison feel as if they were created to satisfy a company's tick sheet instead of being something evolving and worthwhile. There's no passion, no soul, no creativity, and certainly no effort. Right, I think I've banged on enough about Outlaws. Bottom line, this is the best soundtrack I've ever heard, and it will take something special to beat it. Oh, sorry, whoa, pardon me. Right folks, that's the end of the video. Now hopefully you guys have enjoyed all of the soundtracks on offer today. Soundtracks are a very interesting aspect of video games because everyone's taste is different, everyone's experience is different, and everyone's unique experience will affect the way that they feel about a certain soundtrack. As I said before in the video, Outlaws is the greatest soundtrack on a video game ever made. Seriously, it really is. It's the only soundtrack where I felt inspired, loved, and had a lot of memories with the soundtrack because of course I bought the game, well, my dad bought the game all the way back in 1997. But regardless of that, Outlaws will never be beaten in my mind, and unless I find something that's so good that even the gods couldn't even listen to it without feeling insufficient, Outlaws will never be topped. But this is where you come in. There's plenty of soundtracks that I haven't listened to, and I'm sure there's some that you've listened to that you think I should give a go. So let me know in the comments below which ones you think they are and why you like them. Until next time folks, it's time to go back to listening to soundtracks. So until next time, keep listening and I'll see you soon. Now, what should I listen to next? Oh, I know. How about this? What the fuck?